Bernie Sanders went to the California Democratic Convention last Sunday that just passed, and he did what many of the other candidates could not. That's fair. He crushed. Let's talk about it on the soapbox. So my name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. And yes, indeed, Bernie Sanders went to the convention and crushed. And he did so by slamming one middle ground Joe Biden. And let's put that in quotes. If there was one thing that I could add to the speech, and I'm going to just play the speech in its entirety, I don't think there'll be an issue with it, is ridicule. Ridicule. If you're going to bring up Joe Biden, and if you're going to talk about climate change, they just found out that Joe Biden was plagiarizing many of the lines into his climate policy. I honestly don't believe Joe Biden has gotten to the point where he's just, look man, I just want to be president. I've been running for the last 30 years. I just want to be president. Just put me in an office, dog. Why do I have to do all this? So instead he comes out as plagiarizing somebody else's climate policy. He was derided for not having a climate policy. I think he said his climate policy was to beat Trump, which is not really a climate policy at all. So it was rushed and hurried when he finally got it out. One Mr. Bernie Sanders has derided this notion of a middle ground approach, and he did so pretty stridently in this California Democratic speech. They have done their best not to lay gloves on one another, but of course that's a nonsense proposition. You're supposed to lay gloves. You have two wings of the party that are distinct in one another. One side absolutely hates the other side, and you can make an honest assessment that both sides that's true for, but both sides are trying to get this particular nomination, the corporate candidate and the guy who calls himself a socialist. So they're going to have to lay gloves on each other at some point, not to mention Joe Biden has like a 40-year career of all sorts of gaffes and things that you can hit him on. But in this particular case, Sanders is hitting him on policy, substance. Your climate policy sucks. One thing I would add, I don't think Sanders watches this video, but the one thing I would add is ridicule. Joe Biden has a nonsense proposition. The scientist of your world has told you that your world has 12 years to get his house in order. You trust and believe these guys on all of these other issues. This is not magic. This is not mysticism. It's not scientists making an evaluation on whether or not there's extra dimensions and if there are magic in other dimensions, kind of like a Doctor Strange thing. No. This is your physical world. These guys, looking at beakers and measuring things that under normal circumstances they're completely acknowledged and listened to. But on this one specific issue, because it interrupts the way people earn their cash, they're derided and put to the side. Derided, not derided, but ignored. They've told you that your world is heading for a catastrophe. And one of the major candidates in the party that acknowledges science, has said, I'm going to take a middle-of-the-road approach to issue what will be the catastrophic issue, the ending of our world. I'm going to take a middle-of-the-road approach. That seems like a nonsense proposition to me, a proposition that deserves a certain degree of ridicule. But Sanders does it the way Sanders does it. So let's watch Sanders do his thing. California Democratic Convention, one Mr. Bernie Sanders.
And let me begin by saying a few words of thanks for your hospitality for Jane, myself, and my family. Let me thank the California Democratic Party for helping to make this state one of the great progressive forces in America. And let me thank all of you who supported my 2016 campaign for president. Together, we began together a political revolution whose ideas and energy have not only transformed the Democratic Party, but have transformed politics in America. And today, we take that revolution forward. And let me thank everybody in this room for your determination to defeat the worst president in the history of this country. A president who is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, and a religious bigot. Together, we are going to defeat a president who has the most corrupt administration in history and a president who knows nothing about real American values. All of us are united in defeating Trump. But let me be frank with you and raise the issue that I think is on everyone's mind. And that is, what is the best way to defeat Trump? As you all know, there is a debate among presidential candidates who have spoken to you here in this room, and those who have chosen, for whatever reason, not to be in this room. About the best way forward. So let me be as clear as I can be. In my view, we will not defeat Donald Trump unless we bring excitement and energy into the campaign. And unless we give millions of working people and young people a reason to vote and a reason to believe that politics is relevant to their lives. We cannot go back to the old ways. We have got to go forward with a new and progressive agenda. We have got to stand up and make it clear that we believe in a government and an economy and an energy system that represents all of us, not just the 1%. We have got to make it clear that when the future of the planet is at stake, there is no middle ground. We will take on the fossil fuel industry and transform our energy system. We have got to make it clear that when this country drifts toward oligarchy, there is no middle ground. Large, profitable corporations like Amazon will pay their fair share of taxes. When it comes to health care, there is no middle ground. Health care is a human right, not a privilege. And we will guarantee health care to all of our people through a Medicare for all single-payer system. When it comes to abortion, there is no middle ground. A woman has the right to control her own life, not the government. When it comes to prescription drugs, no middle ground. We're going to take on the pharmaceutical industry, cut prescription drug prices in half. And when it comes to mass shootings and the fact that 40,000 people were killed last year with guns, no middle ground. We will take on the NRA. And when it comes to criminal justice reform and immigration reform, no middle ground. We will take on the prison industrial complex. We will take on racism at the border. And when it comes to foreign policy, no middle ground. We will finally put an end to a bloated military budget and end endless wars. Brothers and sisters, Trump wants to divide us up. We will stand together. Black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American. We will stand together and create the nation that we know we will become. Brothers and sisters, at this momentous moment in American history, we have got to be thinking not just about ourselves, but future generations. Let us go forward together. Thank you.
This entire speech is him slamming Joe Biden. The entire speech. Like, if you remember, Joe Biden made that middle ground comment, and each of the items that Bernie Sanders enunciated, he did so with this notion of distancing himself and separating himself from whatever Biden's policy is. There is no middle ground. He made the point about abortion. There is no middle ground on abortion. If you remember, Joe Biden's policy on abortion, he's pro-life, if I'm not mistaken. He just kind of ignores it during the fact of him being a Democrat, if that makes sense. But with all of the legislation that's been taking place across the country dealing with pregnancy and dealing with abortion, do you really want to take the chance with the Biden in office? There's no middle ground. He went on climate. He went on criminal justice. He went down the line. He says there's no going back to the old ways. Now, it's funny. In my old video, I was like, Biden looks like a 90s politician where he doesn't want to be bothered. Yeah, that's the way he's running his campaign. I'm sorry, that's the way he looks to me. It might just be because he's been in public for so long. But he makes a point. He makes a point. You have the potential for something grand. Like a different world is possible, of sorts. Can't get there with Biden. Can't get there with the dinosaurs that they those in that office before. I'm gonna leave this because again, I don't want this one to be too long. Yeah, I like that speech, and at some point these guys are gonna take the gloves off. This was a thinly veiled hit at Biden. I don't know the difference between a thinly veiled hit and a regular hit. I mean, everybody knows that you're hitting a person. The guy said no middle ground or middle ground. You essentially used that for the entirety of your speech, going after him with it. But again, everything that he hit him on was policy. Biden is going to have to explain those policies to a lefty audience in one debate stage after the next, and I can't wait. My argument has been that Biden is going to flame out. You'll see if I'm wrong, but I strongly think I'm right. I'll leave this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please consider supporting through PayPal, Patreon, liking, or sharing. Thanks all.